Jobs were trimmed a little bit in the latest adjustment out of the Department of Labor statistics showing that they're still robust, but about 800,000 plus fewer than we thought over roughly the last year. You worried about that?
Well, I'm worried about it for the country in the sense that we've got to make sure that we've got an economy that's delivering for working people.
This is the largest downward adjustment in the numbers going back to 2009.
That's right.
This, I think, is a major hit to the Democrats.
All right, well, it did take people by surprise. You know, the Department of Labor Statistics goes through this sort of stuff every year or so, and they take everything over a 12-month period to sort of reassess with new adjustments, and that's the number they came with, 818,000 fewer jobs than we thought. The Biden administration came out very quickly, as did Kamala Harris, to point out that under their stewardship, we're still up 14 million jobs, just not 15 million. Again, perspective is everything on this, and for that we go to Wilbur Ross, the former Commerce Secretary of the United States under President Trump, I should say. He's co-chairing the J.D. Vance fundraiser tomorrow, I believe, in the Hamptons. Secretary, always good to have you. What do you make of this revision?
Well, I think it's a very big number. 800,000 people is a huge error to correct. And what's surprising to me is that it comes all in one lump, as opposed to the normal monthly revisions that are routine, because some data comes in later than they had hoped. But it's a big number, and I think it debunks the validity of the Biden-Harris administration, because they were claiming all these millions and millions. Well, most of them were simply the recovery from COVID anyway. So if you take the portion that wasn't COVID related, this is a very big percentage of that. So it's a big miss. It's a big miss statistically, but worse than that, it's a big miss for the present administration's claims.
So you've heard what they have said, Secretary, that we're still up 14 million jobs versus the 15 million. And you're quite right to point out the COVID bounce back. Who gets credit for that? And that back and forth continues as we speak. What's interesting here, though, is part of this revision was that the original, the calculations they used were substantially overestimated. In other words, they built in some positive factors that I guess now they have to try to reverse. And now this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They're not a political group, but they have to deal with this. And they've dealt with this a couple of times in the past. But when they have, the numbers can sometimes be startling. What is it about our government statistics that where this does happen? Infrequent though it is, it does happen.
Well, whenever you're dealing with a universe that's a very large number of tens of millions of people, you have to rely on estimates. You have to rely on surveys. And so a small error of one place or another, particularly when you get to seasonal adjustment, because seasons are never exactly comparable each to the other. So it's hard. It's a hard task to get the numbers right. It's even a hard task just to count the people. We were very pleased that when we took the census in 2020, we successfully enumerated over 99% of all the households. Well, when you're talking 135, 150 million universe, getting within 1% is a very hard task. But
absolutely,
having said that, the 818,000 is not just a rounding error. It's not just a fraction of a percent. It's a very large number.
Indeed it is. That data, when we got it, Secretary, as if there wasn't enough impetus and pressure on the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates, it certainly cinched that possibility. Jerome Powell yesterday in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, seemed to telegraph a cut is in the works for next month. I'm just wondering what you think of the need for that, given this jobs revision, given maybe the slowing going on right now. What do you think?
Well, I think in general, the Federal Reserve pays way too much attention to single monthly figures. Inflation is not a single monthly item. It's an item that lasts for quite a while, as we've seen. So I think there's an overemphasis on single months, and that troubles me. It also is the case that I don't think you can blame the high interest rates for the revision. The revision is simply saying what was actual.
Right.
So it's a whole different set of phenomena.
Do you think, though, that rates should be cut in this environment? It's always awkward when these things happen. They've happened sparingly in the past, particularly during election year. And figures will be pointed at the Federal Reserve. Did you have to do this before an election? Do you think the economy warrants a cut in rates, whether it's before the election or not?
Well, I think it's more important to kill the inflation disease permanently than it is to rely on one little squiggle and reduce rates prematurely.
So you wouldn't be cutting rates right now. You
month or
wouldn't.
two.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. You wouldn't be cutting rates right now.
No, I can understand why they might think about it. I'm just saying I think the risk is less that the economy is going to tank than that inflation will come back. So I would err on the side of being more cautious and delay it a little bit more, get some more data. The very fact that revisions are coming in on a big scale, we'll see how that affects the next month's numbers that come out. Because whenever they revise, they learn something from the revision. So I would just
usually
be a little more
revisions
cautious.
beget revisions, to your point. Secretary, thank you very much. Very good catching up with you. Wilbur Ross, the former Commerce Secretary of the United States. By the way, and Wilbur was touching on it, the Federal Reserve, whatever your views on this, is expected to cut rates next month. There are two other meetings before the end of the year at which they're expected to do the same. Now, whether that's wise or proper or even necessary, that's a jump ball. But that's how the markets see it and why they were up so strong yesterday and on the week. Two back-to-back weeks of pretty strong market performance that we'll be pursuing, by the way, with Ken Fisher on all of that.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.